Okay, thank y'all for being here. We're going to call this meeting to order. It's about 9:04 a.m. and we do have a quorum present. So at this time, we're going to please rise and we'll do our pledge.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Ricky, would you lead us in our prayer, please? Sure. Let us pray.
Our gracious Heavenly Father, Lord, we come to you this morning mindful of the many blessings that you bestow upon us each and every day, God. God, we just ask that you watch over us today as citizens. God, we just ask that you watch over the board, allow them to make their decisions, Lord, that will benefit our community, our county, our country, and our state. God, that we also ask that you watch over each and every one of us as we go our separate ways today, God, and just that we remember what this time of year is all about. Those things we ask in the name of your Son, Jesus. Amen.
Amen. Okay. All right, item 3 on our agenda this morning is consider and/or action on election of officers of the board. So at this time, we'll go through that process. We can start with secretary, treasurer. Stepping up.
Yes, sir.
Kathy,
I will,
will
sir.
remain secretary. Do we hear any comments?
That'd be great.
Official motion.
I'll make a motion for Kathy to remain as secretary.
Okay. I'll have a motion. Seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Congratulations, Kathy. All right, so let's do vice president.
I nominate Ricky to continue to serve in that capacity.
All right, have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Congratulations, Rick.
Appreciate it.
All right, so now we'll do president.
I nominate you, Ryan.
Well, that's
Second.
okay, so have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
So just let the crowd know that this is really a high-paying job that we're doing here. It's really a volunteer position. It's just a minimum amount of money that we get paid is $25. That's what it is. So folks are doing this for the right reason. It's not for fame and glory and all that kind of stuff. It's because we're going to do right for the citizens of Vernon County. Thank y'all for what you're doing.
Thank you.
It's an important job. We've got a lot of folks here in attendance, and that's great. We appreciate you being here. So, having said that, let's go ahead and move into our hearing process. Mitchell, do you have anything for 4-1 here?
Yes, sir.
Is this on?
Yes.
Okay, so I have a presentation we'll give that will go over kind of our standard drought report, which will include climate conditions, drought conditions, forecasts for drought, and then looking at our some individual monitor wells in the district. And we'll move to our drought management plan, what that entails and what it means for everybody, and what the possible outcomes could be for you, the board, today. So let's see if we can. So this is a map of the precip year-to-date as of last Friday. So this doesn't include the last few days worth of rain. Vernon County is right here in the middle. Here's your index here. Most of the county has received about 15 to 25 inches. The lucky portion up here in the north and west part of the county has received a little over 25 inches rain year to date. How that compares to what's considered average, this is a map of the departure from average precip. You can see much of the counties in the orangish area, that's 8 to 12 inches. Some of the reds are above 12 to 16 inches. You can see the significant lack of rainfall south of us in the 16 to 20 and sometimes above 20 inches for the year. This is a map of the LCRA. They have a hydromet website that has a bunch of rain gauges throughout the LCRA territory, which roughly splits Burnett County. So this northeast portion of Burnett County is covered in the Brazos River Basin, so there's no precip gauges there. But these precip gauges throughout the county are for year to date, minus the past few days. You can see the totals are about the same as I just showed, 17 to 20 inches on average in the southern half, and then 20 inches or above in the northern portions. The U.S. Drought Monitor, this is the one for Texas. This is a short-term model, so this takes into account local climate that's short-term soil-based, and it shows that Burnett County to be in the A1 moderate category. The area that we just showed that's to the south of us is significantly worse. The Groundwater District's drought management plan revolves largely around the Palmer Hydrological Drought Index. This is the index for October, so this is the previous index. It is based on these larger category areas, geographic areas. Ours is in the Edwards Plateau region. It was showing us in this extreme category. This is a more long-term drought index that does take into account surface flows and groundwater levels. This is now the new index. This is a change to the severe category, so it's downgraded one category due to the rainfall that we received in November, but still a significant drought. The drought outlooks by NOAA are issued on a 3-month basis, so this goes from December 15th out through the end of March. The browns are areas where drought is forecasted to persist. The yellows are where it's forecasted to develop, and much of our area it's forecasted to persist. And that's mainly due to La Nina, which is now going into its unprecedented 3rd year, which does impact the rainfall in the southern United States, particularly in the winter months, which we're in right now. It's generally drier. But there's some good news. This is a model prediction from NOAA on that El Nino outlook area. It's in the Eastern Pacific, measuring sea surface temperatures. When they're below average, that's La Nina. When they're above average, that's El Nino. And it's forecasted to come out of La Nina into a neutral category and then possibly go into a La Nina stage next summer. So that's good news, and this is reflected in their probability outlooks. Right now we're in La Nina, and then as we move through the rest of winter into spring, go back into a neutral phase, and then it looks most likely that we have a higher probability of going into El Nino next year, which does increase our rainfall in the winter months on average. Of course, there's always off years for that. So that's our outlooks for our region and more continental. I want to move now to our monitor wells. I'll show you a snippet of some of them. All these wells are monitored by the district. All of these graphs are viewable on our website. They're updated generally monthly, but we'll view some of these wells. These 3 Trinity wells, in Ocala, Bertram, and then County Road 252, and then we'll view some Ellenberger wells south of Burnett in Oak Vista, somewhere close to Hamilton Creek, and then one further south on 403. And then we'll view a granite gravel and a granite well near Fairland and Kingsland. So this is a monitor well in Ocala. This is Middle Trinity Aquifer. This is from 2009 forward. As you go down on the y-axis, it's getting deeper. So you can see when it spikes, these are times when the aquifer is highest, and when it's lowest, you can see the readings here. We're recording dang near our lowest levels for that particular region, even lower than the previous drought that bottomed out in 2014. The Trinity, Middle Trinity and the Bertram area, it's a cyclical reading, so it goes up and down based on the seasons, but you can see the trend the past 3 years has had a much steeper decline due to the last 3 years of drought and increased usage. The Trinity Aquifer near County Road 252, very similar to the Bertram well, where it's cyclical, and then all of a sudden, these past 3 years, the trend has changed to more of a downhill trend. Ellenberger Aquifer in Oak Vista. This is a much shallower well that is near or on the outcrop, so you see recharge events occur frequently when we have heavy rainfall, and then discharge from springs and pumping occurring when there is no heavy rainfall. And we were recording our lowest level before a slight uptick here recently. This is Ellenberger Aquifer near the Knife River Quarry off of 281 near Hamilton Creek. This is a shorter term, it's only 16, so we don't have the previous drought year on here, but you can see the trend during that time frame continues to go down. Ellenberger Aquifer, south part of the county, County Road 403, very shallow as well, near recharge zones. So you can see when we have heavy rainfall, and then when it's being depleted from spring flow leakage and pumping. This is a spring, Delaware Springs in Vernon at the golf course. This is measured not every day, but it's measured a couple times per year by the USGS. The flows here are in cubic feet per second, and it started in 2016. You can see during wetter times we have higher flows, and then during drier times it's lower. But you can see this last year, all these are down at zero, so there was no flow out of Delaware Springs. The Granite Gravel Aquifer in Mill Creek subdivision near Kingsland. It's a shallow aquifer that's gravel based and sand based decomposed granites, and you can see the trends there. The trend has continued to go on a steep decline the past year. And much the same for the granite aquifer measured near the Fairland area. Now all of those wells, I had Dr. Deeds with Intera, he's our district's consultant. He did this analysis for us to overlay the Palmer Hydrological Drought Index, the PHDI, with our monitor wells that I just showed. So these are the 3 wells for the Trinity. The red lines are the water levels, the blue line is the PHDI, and you can see that there is a pretty good correlation. The PHDI, when it's in drought stage, this is a 0 line here. So above 0 would be wet conditions, below it is going into drought. And it coincides with our drought stages. So 1, 2, 3, and 4 are the trigger points for the drought stages. So -4 is the cutoff for the critical or extreme drought stage on the PHDI. You can see that the PHDI just barely rose above -4, which is why it went downgraded to the severe category. But it's just barely right on that threshold. And if you overlay these Trinity graphs on there, you don't see a huge response at this point from any rainfall that we've had. The same is to be said for the Ellenberger Aquifer. The blue line again is the PHDI, the red is the same wells that I just showed you, but overlaid on top of the PHDI. And you can see they line up very well with that index. During wet times, we have recharge events and high water levels. During the drought times, they coincide with lower water levels. And I want to note that the PHDI only went below -4 one other time over this decade, and that was in, of course, 2011. But even during the 2013 and 14 timeframe, it was a little bit higher than it was this past year and in 2011. The granite, gravel, and granite are shown here as well, and again, they line up fairly well. There's a little bit of a lag time there, but they do coincide quite well with the PHDI, and Dr. Deeds and I were both pleased that the index was it seems like it's a good indicator for our area because it matches well with our water levels that we're measuring. So these are a couple snippets from our drought management plan. I just want to point out that the plan revolves largely around the PHDI or other factors, including requests from local citizens, and also we can use our various monitor wells if aquifer levels are declining and may take action as necessary. So I wanted to point out that even though it moved to stage 4, we moved from stage 4 to stage 3, we still have the possibility to remain in stage 4 because the analysis that Dr. Deeds did, it doesn't show that we've rebounded much at all from any kind of rainfall. And what that means for the board and the district, the stage 4, we can do up to a 15% decrease in the mandatory reductions for permitted users. The stage 3, that changes to up to 10% decrease, but everything else is the same. I wanted to break down what this plan actually means and who it impacts. These are the registered wells in the district. This top chart here is the operational wells. So these are wells that are with a pump that are producing water or have the opportunity to produce water. The exempt wells make up a large category, over 5,000 of those wells. Let me zoom out a little bit so we can see this pie chart as well. The exempt wells make up, I think, roughly 85% of the total wells in the county. Those are exempt from permitting, they're exempt from drought regulations here. The non-exempt wells are the ones that are subject to drought reductions. Those are broken down into several categories, the largest of which is what we call non-exempt by rule. These are wells that were drilled after October 2018 that are used for domestic or livestock use, that are not capable of producing more than 25,000 gallons per day. They are not metered and they're not issued a volume of water on an operating permit. Unlike the non-exempt permits, we have large, small, quarry, we have some DLP wells. Largely, these are your more traditional permits. These are operating permits. They're issued a volume of water per year, and some of those are metered based on when they were drilled and how much pumping capacity they have. So there's 151 of those type of permits, which is on 307 wells, and 68 of those permits require metering. So when we look at the pie chart again, this category of operating permit, it encompasses about 4% of the wells in the district. But that 4% of wells, we estimate, uses about 50% of the water in Bryan County. So those are the ones that you have opportunity today to have mandatory reductions on. These not exempt by rule wells, there's a lot of them. They're small pumping capacities, but they're not metered and they're not issued a volume of water. I broke down our operating permits that are metered onto their 2021 totals that they submitted to us that were over 75% of their permitted totals. So these are what you might consider the most impacted by this potential mandatory reduction. And there's about, I think, 16 here permittees. This is the used amount reported, this is the permitted amount, and then this is the percent of permit used. You'll notice we had two that went over. You may want to consider a show cause hearing at some point for those two, albeit they went over by 1 acre-foot apiece. The others these are all within 75%, and we're talking about a maximum of 15% reduction that could occur. Broke this same group down in a chart. It shows the acre feet and the entity. You can see most of these are small, minus a few of these public water supplies from Corrick, City of Bertram, and Highland Haven, and Aqua. The rest are very small, insignificant totals of permittees. I'll take one question. What's
Are you gonna post this on your website?
you can ask for it, but I'm not going to post it.
Okay.
So with that said, I'd like to give you my recommendation for the board. I think that we have a drought management plan for a reason. I think that we ought to follow it. I think that we've noticed and discussed it quite a bit recently that we probably need to look at modifying it at some point in the future. But it's what we have in place now, and I think that my recommendation is that you move forward with the 15%. I'm sorry, let me back up. You remain in stage 4 of your drought plan, and that you do a mandatory reduction of 15% to the permitted users. With that said, I think you should read the written comments we received, and you should listen to the folks that are here today. I think that might persuade you otherwise, or may strengthen that recommendation. So
Just to make sure we all understand the rules, we have to invoke this restriction before the end of the year. It can't be increased, but it can only be decreased during the year. Is that correct?
that's correct. So the board, if they choose to adopt the mandatory reductions, it has to be made prior to the end of the year for the following calendar year. So this is a temporary restriction for 2023. It cannot be increased throughout the year. The board may not increase the mandatory reduction during the year, but it can be terminated at any point. If we come out of drought, then it can be terminated. And my recommendation is off of the permitted totals, permit allocations. So for example, if a permittee is permitted for 100 acre feet, that then gets reduced for 2023 to 85 acre feet.
So it's not based on usage, it's based on the permit volume.
That's correct. Kathy, did you have is that your question? Okay. We received a handful of written comments. I already presented these to the board. We received one from a Miss Magnan, November 22nd. We received written comments from Knife River, December 15th. Capital Aggregates, December 16th. Mark Parker, on December 17th. And water engineers working under the Windmill RV Park received this December 16th. So those are the written comments that we have received thus far. And now I think open it to the public comments.
Okay, so folks, we're gonna have 3 minutes for y'all to come up and speak to us. And forgive me if I butcher anybody's name, it's not intentional. Okay.
They need to come to the mic.
Yes, and there is a lectern right there, a microphone. Before we start that, I do need to recognize our local elected officials. Commissioner Byerly's here. Are there any other commissioners here, any elected officials? So Damon, thanks for being here. Okay, the first one on my list is Mr. Jack Shank. That's pretty quick. All right.
Here, okay.
Over there. Go up there to the lectern, please.
My name is Jack Shank. One of the monitoring wells is actually on my property, County Road 252. I'm a geologist by background and actually have some background in hydrology. I support the recommendation that's in front of you to cut back. I have 3 small registered wells on my property and would be more than, actually I think need to abide by the recommendations out there. I actually did a back of the envelope calculation that I can do on what it might take to replenish the reservoir back to normal circumstances. We need about 2 solid years of above average rainfall in order to get this thing back to where we want it. So I think it's a difficult decision in front of you. I think the fact that it will be randomly applied across all significant users is the right thing to do. I would encourage the board, and I spoke to a few people when I came in here that are residential users, to communicate more with the community on, you know, there's a time maybe for the residential user to voluntarily, with the understanding of what's going on, maybe to consider some voluntary reductions in there. So I support the recommendation that's in front of you, and it's a difficult decision, but I think it's a necessary decision.
All right, thank you. All right, next one is Ben Carlson.
I'm just gonna let the letter we submitted stand there for Knife River.
Okay. City of Bertram, Georgina.
And the mayor.
And the mayor. All right.
I didn't realize there'd be so many people here today. So my name's Georgina with the City of Bertram. The City of Bertram has a grandfather permit that we're all aware of. Sorry, can't, I'm a little shorter. I'm even tiptoeing. So you're aware that we have a grandfather permit, 366.5 acre feet of water. I think the City of Bertram has followed your rules. We've listened to the board the last couple of years on what it's going to take to get the citizens of Bertram more water. We've spent a considerable amount of time and resources to obtain additional water rights contiguous to our current wells in the Ellenberger Aquifer to increase the amount of water that we're pumping. This production is going to cost the citizens of Bertram because we've obtained additional water rights as per the board's recommendation, and upwards of 110 acre feet of water if the new permit is approved that you'll hear on the next meeting. So we understand your concerns for conservation, but we are a public water supply company. The city provides water to citizens of Bertram, and we have developments that are coming that are wanting to come in, and our board, our city council is having to make those decisions on whether or not to let them annex in and become part of the city and develop the properties. So in doing that, they've approved permits, and we're gonna get reduced by 15%. So it's hard to make that decision. I'm not a decision maker for them, but they're having to make those hard decisions on whether or not to approve development based on if we can supply that property with water. And we thought we were headed in the right direction by obtaining those contiguous water rights and spending that time and effort to do that. And then this comes up. And I get it, I understand what your roles are, but we do have those concerns. I don't know if there's anything else you want to add to that.
We've seen the graph that y'all put up there a while ago, and I'm still not really clear on how many municipalities this really affects. The ones that are really needed, what cities are going to be involved in this reduction. When we say up to 15%, are we going to start at 15%? Is this how are we going to figure this out? Because and really, how long is it 15% going to last? I know y'all said that after the drought is over with, but who determines when the drought is done? Is it the water board, or who is it going to be that's going to tell us
Finish your statement.
But I'm just curious about those things, for our city, because we are trying, I do understand about the drought. That's not I'm not fighting that, it is what it is. And we want to be, responsible also, because looking at the, graphs, we understand we are pulling a lot of water out for a city, but we do have a lot of growth that we can't control that's coming our way. You know, and it's gonna be in Vernon pretty soon. So it's just making its way this way. And what do we do as a little city that's now exploding with thousands of homes that are coming into our city? What do we do at this point in time?
I guess that comment, to that comment, what can be done is, so if we deny them, onto our water system because our permit limits are capped, or we're at capacity on our permit limit, those permits are gonna be coming to you as or as exempt permits. Correct, Mitchell? Those will come as exempt permits, like individual landowners who develop land will now be able to come to you and not be required to be metered as the city of Orleans. So that could be a concern for y'all later in the future if, you know, you're gonna do what you wanna do, but those permits are gonna come back to you. So we're gonna have to deny them.
So y'all bringing a permit amendment forward next month, is that correct?
We've got a new permit application because we obtained some contiguous water rights as per our discussion.
And how much are you gonna ask for, do you know?
I believe it's right at 440 acre feet of water. It's 1 acre per acre rule, so it was 440 acres that we obtained contiguous water rights. And so we wrote the check for those water rights. I mean, we're on a contract with that landowner, so we were paid for those.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Angel Garcia. Go ahead. Okay. Olin Kelly.
Here, just listen.
Okay. Robert Denniston.
Actually, I have no questions than anything else. First question is the predictions. How far out have you gone with predictions on the water?
Do you want a back and forth dialogue here, Mr. President?
No.
Well, let's go.
Just how far out have you looked?
Say the question again.
How far out have you looked on predictions of current water usage as far as the different reservoirs?
We look out 50 years on some plans, we look out shorter terms for other things.
Is that information available on the website?
Part of it is, yeah.
Okay. Okay, is there any plan on restrictions on the number of exempt wells in the county? So if we have, like Bertram they want to grow, okay? I can understand all cities are gonna grow, it's just a fact of life. There's numerous subdivisions going in. Is there any strict restriction on the number of wells that can be put in on subdivisions, like 5 per 100 acres, or 10 per 100 acres, or what?
Did you want me to address?
Yeah, let's address it and move on.
We'll use up a lot of your time, but I think the county is requiring, the county commissioner's court requires water availability studies for subdividing property. That study is then reviewed by us, and Mr. Deeds, our consultant, and that has to support whether there's sufficient quantity or quality of water for that development. So those things are being looked at, but it's under the county's rule rather than the district's rule. The exempt wells that you referred to before, they're largely exempt from any restrictions by state law.
Now, on the restrictions as far as the city, there's different, as everybody knows, there's different usages for water. There's actual personal use, and there's lawns. I've seen. I live in a subdivision northwest corner of Burnett County, and we have had people that came out that wanted to put in a lawn, okay? If we get 3,000 people that move in to a given area and want to put in a 1 acre lawn, that's gonna use a hell of a lot of water. I think certain grasses take up to 33 gallons a day during the summer months. That's just unrealistic. If any additional permits are allotted for, like for Bertram or Burnham or whatever, will there be any restrictions as to water usage?
Our restrictions are for beneficial use, so those are defined as beneficial uses.
A lawn is defined as
That's the
beneficial.
law, yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
And sir, you're welcome to come in and speak to Mitchell at the office if you have more questions. He's there. He's happy to answer questions.
I've been in Burnett County for a day or two, and I'm born and raised in All Falls. Someone asked about the drought in Texas. It hasn't gotten any better in the last 60, 70 years. So every 7 years you may have a good year, but it's going to get worse every year after that. And it's just a cyclical thing. It's going to happen, but I haven't seen anywhere that I lived in Texas that the amount of water has ever caught up. The more you suck out of it, out of the aquifer, the less likely it is to catch up.
Okay, next one is Bob Kober. I said that right.
With no further, you've got our comments, they just registered if you guys have any questions, please.
Okay, thank you, Bob. Let's see, Jimmy Daniels. Mr. Daniels. Tom Green.
Good morning and Merry Christmas, everybody. I'm Tom Green. A few of you know me, so I'll introduce myself in about 10 seconds. I'm a Christian, I'm a husband, I'm a father, I'm a grandfather, I'm a son. By profession, I'm an engineer, a professional engineer. And so, historically, well, let me back up. The information I bring to you is kind of like lifelong. I was raised in West Texas. My dad drilled wells. He serviced windmills and down pumps, and that's what I grew up learning how to do. Dad told me 30 years ago, he said, this state's in water problem, and nobody understands it yet, but they will. And I think we're there. I'll say in, let's see, about 1980, we drilled a well in Marlin, Texas, a 4,000-foot well. And that was done because they were needing actually geothermal as well as
Could you speak a little louder, please?
Pardon?
Could you speak into the microphone, please?
Okay, thank you. Anyway, that well, when it was completed, had an artesian pressure of about 30 psi at the surface. Today, it's about 100 feet below the surface. And it's another area, but it's still a trinity. Actually, the first hotel that Hilton ever built in the state of Texas was at Marlin. It was a 10-story hotel, still exists. And at the time it was drilled, it had 20 psi static pressure at the top of the hotel. Now it's 700 feet below. My point is that, you know, in the 50s we had the 7-year drought. Some of you may know about that, remember it. And we came out of that and everything seemed to be okay. We had 6 million people in the state at that time. Today we have 30 million, all using water. And it's a everybody thing. I support the restrictions, but honestly, from my perspective, it seems to be a bit of a Band-Aid, and something more that is needed for the state, for the county, and some of that may end up in the legislature. I know that the restrictions are limited by state law, but I do believe that some of that may need to change. And trust me, I'm a water rights person. My dad still has an irrigation well that we use. So, but the conservation is going to be needed, I do believe. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next one is Sandra, I don't see the last name there. Cole? All right. Good, okay, thank you. Next one is John Carmaniski. John?
I got nothing to say, I just filled out the problem.
Okay. You give me a chance to butcher your name. Sorry. Last one, Victoria.
Same thing.
Same thing?
Same thing.
All right, thank you, man. Okay, that's all of our public speakers. Any other public comment? Yes, sir.
Contact.
Please come up if you want to speak. And state your name for the record, too, please, sir.
Steve Tomlinson, resident of Oak Vista over here, and we have a small well. I'm just curious how you're contacting all the homeowners and residential users. We registered our well when we drilled it, but we had to jump through some hoops to do it. The well company didn't do that automatically. So you showed us that 50% of the people out there are residential users like me. How do you get to them and tell them, first of all, about this meeting? I just got an email. I didn't get anything in the mail. How many of these wells are out here that these people don't know what you're trying to convey to them? So, to me, that's something that, you know, maybe we could improve on so that the residential users know, hey, I need to cut back too. We've got a lot of people in our neighborhoods and areas that, you know, water lawns and stuff like that. So that was, I guess, one of my big questions for you. Thank you.
Yeah, I think outreach. For this particular hearing, our drought plan required us to notify all the permitted users. So we did that for all of those non-exempt by rule wells via email. We did that for all of the operating permit holders via email and mail. And then we post at the courthouse, we post at the district's office, we send it to our email list, we sign up on an email list to get our notices. As far as general outreach, the district here has funded signs that go on county roads that say severe drought, conserve groundwater. That's something we have done this year. We just received another shipment of signs, so those will be going out. That has been a great visual for people to see as they're driving down the roads. We have had the newspaper, all newspapers have been covering us frequently during the drought, and they've been writing several reports monthly. And then we have our website, which has a tremendous amount of information. Me personally, I can speak to any groups. If there's POAs, HOAs, civic groups, I do those presentations all the time. I can make them specific to those individual areas if needed. And then we're always exploring other ways on how to get the word out. The board knows that. Trying to be creative on that.
So, would you clarify a couple of things?
Sure.
Don't mind. So there was a question about how long this restriction would be for 1 year only, correct?
A
maximum of 1 year, and we could revoke it if we get from court. The other question, we've invoked a voluntary restriction. Could you just talk a moment about that what that includes and what we're encouraging people to do, but it is voluntary?
Correct. Right now, we're under still a 40% voluntary reduction that we're calling for all well users to do, any size of well. And throughout the year, we've changed those drought stages as the drought has gotten worse, and
we've updated that call for voluntary reductions to be had by all well users. And, you know, sometimes it takes a village, you know, it takes people to tell their neighbors, to send an email to their neighbors, to tattle on somebody who's outdoor watering too much, you know. There's some limitations on what the district can and cannot do, but just spreading that word alone is something that we've already been doing throughout the year. And if we did the mandatory, or regardless, we would still call for voluntary restrictions on all well users. And then some of those well users might have to have mandatory reductions. But everybody is affecting the groundwater to some degree if you're pumping from a well. So it should be on everybody to do some sort of conservation.
Just a slight comment on what Mitchell said about the length of the drought. The management plan says it's a minimum of 30 days, automatically renews unless revoked by the board.
I'd like to see a show of hands of people who have seen the signs.
Did y'all hear that?
So she asked to show of hands who has seen the drought signs put out on county roads.
And want to thank the county commissioners because we've been able to do that in collaboration with the county because it's actually their pole that we're able to use. So I was just curious, it seems like quite a number of people have noticed the signs and we're grateful for them. Yeah, and the county's labor to put them up as well.
While Mitchell's standing there, any other questions for Mitchell while we're in this phase? Yes, sir.
Just a curiosity question. Has there been anything considered with respect to rainwater harvesting? About 1,000 square feet of roof will take one person's household use per year. So, just wondering if that is being consideration in the mix.
Not officially. We certainly endorse rainwater harvesting at the district, but there's no rules, there's no mechanisms in place currently for the board to do anything with rainwater harvesting.
So, we're just figuring out if the city of Berkeley loses 180 LEVs and some of these subdivisions decide to go outside the city of Berkeley and develop each one of those homes or punch a hole in the ground to the Trinity, because they're not going to go to the Ellenberger. The bulk of our water is pulled from the Ellenberger Park. What is that going to do to all these homeowners that are outside the city? They're getting now 30, 40, 50, 60 homes, punching holes in the ground to get water that's coming to the Trinity, not from the Ellenberger. How's that going to affect? Versus pulling from the Ellenberger versus pulling from the Trinity.
Certainly when you use more water, it has some effect. And I think a lot of those charts that I showed of the water levels, I think it's a combination of increased pumpage and climate conditions. And so yes, if you have more wells, you got more pumping, you're gonna have further drawdown. But again, if they're approved in your city, you may have to look, if they're in your ETJ, you may want to consider adopting water availability studies required. If it's in the county's purview to approve the platting, they already have that requirement. It's reviewed by our consultant. They've got approved, they got sufficient water. And that includes looking at surrounding subdivisions, surrounding wells, everything that's already existing and or approved around it in the model.
Those signs are permanent for a while. Did you assign sign permanent for the well, or does it count?
The district does all of the permitting for groundwater. We manage groundwater in Vernon County.
Do you have any legal things to say about it?
I'll lay that over to Bill, he's our legal counsel.
The district has rules on spacing and production. The wells have to meet the spacing requirements, they have to meet the whatever production requirements. The district analyzes the effect on other wells. If the wells don't meet the district's rules, then the district can deny a permit.
And there's a lengthy process of what you have to do and prove to get an operating permit.
Reason the county had said that any subdivision is going to be, not necessarily subdivision, but I think we're going to call it, would be a minimum of 10 acres, but I think right the ridge is supposed to be out of the if they put it, if they have more than 5 acres, that's all the else.
Yeah, I hadn't heard the same thing that you had heard, but you have a county commissioner here. I don't think they have those 10-acre limits that you described. So.
That was discussed.
Can y'all hear what's going on?
All right, let's y'all take that sidebar and let's move on. All right, any other questions for Mitchell? Yes.
Yeah, I've got a question. I didn't see any distinction between residential and agriculture. So, you know, obviously if you're in agriculture, that's something that you see in the whole world. So what are the distinctions there?
Right, the reductions that would be put in place are there for everybody across the board in a specific category based on pumpage. It's not based on usage. So there's no priority of use in the groundwater world. So our permittees are based on their capability of their well. So if an agriculture operator has an operating permit, they're still subject to the same regulations as a city would be. And I think the vision of the plan to adopt this prior to the year that it takes place is for people to plan. And agriculture that would allow you some time to plan your herd or crops or whatever you're doing, rather than say right now in July we got to cut back immediately. Like, that's not how the plan is written today.
All right, thank you, Mitchell. Oh, one more? Yes.
So I've been living in Bertram for about 3 years now. And 10 plus acres, there's only 2 of us. I probably couldn't use any less water than I'm using. I've never watered my lawn. But in 3 years, I've never gotten any kind of communication that says, hey, listen, we've got this situation going on. Can you not use a washing machine unless it's full? Not use a dishwasher unless it's full. Just, you know, don't water the lawn, don't wash your car, things like this. And the other question that I've got, if you've got an unmetered well, and you talk about a 15% reduction, well, how would you know and how would you enforce it?
Lets you envision how that second question is going to be interpreted. There's no way to measure it, so I'm not sure how we can enforce that. Are you on the city's public system, or are you on a well?
I have a private well.
Okay. Well, we would not regulate the usage, so we would not say that you cannot water between this hour and this hour. We're just regulating a volume annually. Same goes for the city. So we're not telling, if the city has an operating permit for the district and the board chooses to do the 15% reductions, we're just telling them now their permit is reduced 15%. They then decide how to achieve that. And it's up to the individual well owner to decide how you achieve your conservation.
Yeah, I think I'd add to that. There's so much information that comes out on social media, the evening news, the local papers about different ways to conserve. It's up to you as the homeowner, the well owner, to figure out how that's going to work for you. I don't think it's going to be our desire to try to get in the middle of that. I mean, I think we're, at a higher level here at the groundwater district, and we're relying on folks to do what's right, and do the right thing. And we'll get through this drought together, doing it that way. Anything else from Mitchell? Yes, sir.
What's the penalty for going over?
If you have a permit and you have a meter, you go over, it triggers civil penalties in our rules. I don't have them in front of me, but is there?
There are categories of violations, and I'm assuming, there are categories of violations for the district's rules, and the penalties are on a daily basis and range from $50 to $500 a day. Over pumping is a major violation that could subject you up to $500 a day, depending on how many violations there are.
That's your question. All right. Thank you, Mitchell. So at this point in time, I guess we need to take a vote.
No, hold on. Let's go back to our agenda. So you need to adjourn this hearing. Item 5 would be.
Oh, item 5, okay. All right. At this point in time, hearing no more comments, it's 10 a.m. We'll adjourn this hearing. All right, so at 10:01, we'll reconvene our regular meeting. Item 5 is consideration and or action on drought stage and possible mandatory drought water reductions for non-exempt permit holders.
I gave you my recommendation at the hearing. Reiterated again that our recommendation is that you do move forward with the 15% reductions on non-exempt permit holders, and that you remain in your stage 4 drought condition.
Okay. So does anyone want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion. Well, I think we should have maybe a little discussion. Okay, you want to make the motion first?
I'll make a motion to impose the 15% mandatory drought water restriction for non-exempt permit holders and stay in our current drought season.
Second.
Motion is second. Any discussion?
Yeah, I just think, it's a difficult decision to make. And we should base it on the facts. The facts are, we know the Palmer Drought Index and the forecasts are not favorable to groundwater. We know our monitoring wells are going down. And we know that more and more people are moving to the area. And our choices are to not do this, or to go ahead and invoke this restriction. And you think about what contingency plan we have if the drought continues and more people keep coming, the decisions are going to get more and more difficult as we go along. So I see it as the board has no choice but to invoke this. And if we get the rains, we can reverse it at that time.
Any other discussion? Okay, so motion second. All those in favor? Aye. Motion passes. Okay, that was item 6 is any public comment, which would be outside of our, this is in general public comment. Anyone?
Should we take a break?
I'm sorry.
Break?
Yeah, so let's take a 10-minute break.
I want to say that you, the board, should have introduced yourself to this body.
Okay, I'm
I'm the board president. I was just reelected for whatever reason, I don't know, I guess. But lifelong Burning resident, and we're honored to serve.
I'm Paul King. My wife and I have lived in Burnett County for 15 years. I'm a retired petroleum engineer, and I represent the at-large area.
I'm Kathy Griffiths Bailey. I've lived in Burnett County for 30 years and born and raised in Austin. Professionally, I've worked in healthcare administration. I've been retired since 2014.
I'm Bill DeGaw, I'm the attorney for the district. Mitchell Sodek, general manager.
I'm Homer Will. I've been here 15 years, my wife and I, and we live in, and I represent precinct 3.
Ricky Benzog, director for precinct 4, 45 plus years, native of Scottsboro.
And I'm Neil Deeds, I'm a hydrologic consultant for the district.
Well, I'm Sandra Cole. I live on County Road 223, north of River Road. And I drilled a dry well in 2005. No water.
No water. How deep did you, where'd you stop at?
I forgot the well driller, just quit.
Yeah.
But anyway, we paid for a dry well, but I was fortunate to get chemical water. Cost a lot of money, but I got chemical water.
Right. All right. Donita reminded me that I need to read this out since we did re-elect officers. So I'm going to read this out. So y'all just bear with me. Note for the record that all current directors, Paul King, Kathleen Griffiths Bailey, Homer Will, Ryan Rowney, and Ricky Benzile, and General Manager Mitchell Sodek will remain on signature documents relating to the checking account of the district at financial institutions used for this purpose by the district. Note for the record that President Rowney, Secretary Treasurer Bailey, General Manager and Public Funds Investment Officer Mitchell Sodek, and Office Manager and Public Funds Investment Officer Donita Coates were the only board members or staff included on signature documents relating to the investment of funds of the district at financial institutions used for this purpose by the district. That covers it, right, Donita? Okay. Let's see, where did we leave off at?
Item number 7.
Number 7, right? So considering our action on spacing variance request for exempt well, Patrick and Jessica Nelson.
We received a spacing variance application, and here's the circumstances that justified it. This is in, I think, the ancient Oaks area, which is part of granite formations, and I think they've had some trouble in the past drilling a well, so they identified a location which they said that they witched, and other reasons that the well has to be closer than 50 feet to the property line. And the property owner that they're too close to, because our rules are 50 feet setbacks, if you can meet them, and they certainly can, they're choosing a spot that is closer than 50 feet, 27.5 feet away. They did submit a signed absence of objection to the spacing variance application by the neighbor, that they can be within 22.5 feet of the property line. Because we got the absence of objection, you can, I think the board shall grant the spacing variance, but the board has to do it rather than myself. So I suggest that you do that.
If the neighbors sell their property, does this have to be redone at any given point?
So we are filing these on the deed of the property. So long as the county clerk is letting us do that, we're putting these on there so that if it does sell, it's available.
I'll make a motion to approve spacing variance request for exempt well for Patrick and Jessica Nelson.
Okay.
Just a verification, there was only a single other property owner involved in the spacing, correct?
That's right.
So I have a motion. Have a second. Any other discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Our motion passes. Okay, number 8, consider and/or action on minutes of the regular board meeting held on November 18th, 2022.
I move adoption.
Motion second. Any other discussion on the minutes? All those in favor? Alright, motion passes. Number 9, consider and/or action on expenditures for November 2022 budget line item adjustments and review the 2022 and 2023 budget.
I don't have any line item adjustments needed, so we're beginning to get some of our taxes in, although there's still on smaller amounts. We should be getting the larger deposits here shortly. Expenses fairly mundane for the month of November. We're doing fine on our budget. It's still early in the year, and no adjustments are needed. Are there any specific questions on any of the expenditures? I suggest that you move to approve them.
So moved.
Motion. Second. Any discussion on the budget? All right, all those in favor? Aye. All right, motion passes. Number 10, consider and/or action on the FY 2021-2022 annual report.
So as part of our management plan, we're required to do our annual report to update everything that we've done in the year on achieving our management goals and our management plan, and that's what we have presented to you, the 2021-2022 annual report. In its entirety is printed off here. This is the actual report itself. The attachments and everything are included in the main report. I won't go over everything, but if there's specific questions or anything that jumped out at you, please let me know.
What did you do in your spare time?
Attended to drought conditions and everything related to that. No, I did a lot of presentations this year, which was, it happens every year. We're in a dry time. People are concerned, so did quite a few presentations, still open to doing more. Groups want those done. The newspaper was pretty active on our meetings and drought, so there's a lot of articles on the newspaper there. So it was a busy year.
Yeah, Mitchell, I just give you some props. I've had a lot of good feedback on your presentations and how informative they are, and so people appreciate you going out and doing those. Like I said, it's been a busy year, like Paul said. We got some new staff, and it's just only going to get more busy as we go through this coming year, the way it looks. So thank you for what you're doing.
You're welcome. It's good to hear. If there are questions, we can approve this.
Need to approve the annual report. So moved. Have a motion. Second. All those in favor? Aye. Motion passes. Okay, number 11, manager and our staff report and update on the following.
Well registrations and permitting. This is an updated chart of September onward of the applications received on the different stages that we moved through. The takeaway here is that this is a decreasing level of applications received, which is opposite of what it was a year ago. We were sitting high about 50 to 60 applications received just 6 months ago, and even last year, and now it's seemingly averaging closer to 30 applications received. So, and you see that in the drilling. The drillers' backlogs are getting caught up, and some are hunting for more jobs. So several still have long backlogs, of course. It's been a change. I think the economy is the main driver of that. The drought signage, we purchased 60 more signs. They are at our office right now. The county is going to come pick them up and distribute those as they see fit. We received this comment, which I also included in our drought hearing. And there's several more comments that I received personally about people appreciating signs and how they think that they're affected. And I think it was money well spent, and hopefully will last us quite a while. They're flip up signs, so they can be flipped up when we're not in the drought, and turn back down when we are. So, WaterWise program, we are phasing that program out, but we did have some. I think it was Spicewood Donita Elementary School did contribute at last minute, so we'll be funding that. We were honoring until the end of the year any requests from teachers for that program that we do with the 5th graders. The settlement in connection with Deer Springs, we have received the settlement payment from them, and as far as I'm concerned, that's closed. We pulled down the hearing date, and we are in good standing at this time.
Dismiss the lawsuit.
Dismiss the lawsuit. Good. That's all I've got for the manager's report.
Any comments, board members?
So I have a question. So will everybody affected by the 15% reduction, I assume they'll be notified, just like they were notified about the hearing, they'll get some correspondence saying 2023, here's your new limit?
That's correct.
Okay, just to make sure. And the other comment is, it appeared from some of the questions, and I know we worked hard the last year or so, you do your talks in the newspapers, but I think we need to get creative on how to better reach the community about voluntary restrictions and, to get the word out. So some of the questions seem to indicate that people aren't hearing what we're doing and what we're trying to do. I don't know if there are other districts doing other things or whatever ideas you had. I know you're very busy, but I think that's an important part of what we do, is making the public aware of where to find.
And I'm always open to fresh ideas. Other districts varies greatly. Some have dedicated education employee that works with schools and puts on other functions like public education. I don't know if Kelly Tarla's here with AgriLife, and she's going to be ramping up some groundwater talks this coming year, and we've been in discussions on what items need to be discussed more. So that's another resource for us.
And I'm just asking questions, I don't know, would something like a billboard be a cost-effective way to maybe get the word out, and basically duplicate our drought signage on a billboard that you can't miss when you drive down the highway? We can't afford to do TV commercials and stuff like that, but is there a cost-effective way to I'm gonna fall, how do we increase our presence as far as where we're at?
Yeah, it's something I thought about, because we're putting these signs on the county roads. Right. So the highways, state highways, are uncovered, run only. So that's a potential avenue. I don't know how much it would cost, but we can check into it.
The other thing I would do is people drive into the area just to look at a potential home. At least people who've never thought of groundwater, if they see a billboard, didn't think about that, groundwater is an issue, maybe I should check into it.
And we've gone down the route of, trying to include documents and closing and the title companies. I don't think it's effective though. There's too much paperwork. People will just sign and move on. That it's not the place to do it. But that is a way to get to those people, but it's not effective in my opinion.
I wonder about if there's any sort of a liaison with TxDOT. Is there a way to make a connection there to see what I'm in agreement? I have no objection to looking into the billboard thing, but now entering Burnett County, if there's a way on the major highways to call attention to our concerns from time to time. I don't know whether
I'd like to
outreach has any information.
I'd like to ask Bill, I know Barton Springs District has some signs.
Yeah, they put up temporary signs. I think the signs y'all are doing, I like them better because you can flip, they're there all the time. Whereas someone's not having to go out and put them out every time, they're just flipping the signs. But they put them out for each drought stage. They also have a full-time employee that reaches out to exempt well owners and non-exempt, and they have a newsletter, and, you know, they have the personnel to do those kinds of things.
Yeah, that's the other thing to consider if TxDOT would allow something like that. You know, the county's doing all the effort of flipping them up and down and installing them. How do we work something with them to get that same? It's gonna be more challenging for sure, but maybe the idea is to go to a different billboard route or even a private landowner agreement.
Maybe in your spare time, you could visit with some of the, I don't know who has these billboards, how that business operates. Inquire about what I guess you rent those on a monthly basis, I guess.
And there are some actually national entities that do billboards around the country.
Yeah, we could cover 281, 29, 71,
yeah.
some way, somehow. I mean, so we need to put a pencil to it and see what it would cost, of course, and then you have to design a billboard, so I don't know what kind of money we're talking here. But it might be a good way to get some more word out.
And your thoughts are that you want to tailor it more towards like drought conditions, or is it district general?
That was just my comment. I'd like to hear the board's opinion about that. I mean, maybe it needs to be a broader message. I don't know.
I'll start looking at billboards and what other options may exist.
But I'm like Paul, it's pretty clear that we're not getting all the word out as we need to.
I mean, the other option is social media promotions. We purposely don't have a social media presence, but the promotional side is something that I know some districts do. Again, they have more people dedicated to that mission.
I don't think we're looking to add staff or anything like that. Focus on our core mission primarily.
I wonder whether any of this has been addressed through the association, whether there's been a presentation or a conversation, a panel discussion about ways in which to elevate the level of awareness where there are districts. I don't.
Yeah, there's been workshops to that nature.
Yeah.
More so geared to general district awareness, not necessarily drought, but again, there's been whole topics on social media and how to interact on that platform, which I think is effective, but it's very different than what we've done in the past. So. But I'll explore some ideas on where we can go with it.
Thanks, Mitch.
Any other comments, concerns?
I just want to restate, I think maybe it was the November meeting or October meeting. I know we're getting ready to go into a legislative session. There may be changes in the law that we'll need to look at our rules. I want to be sure to include a review of our drought management plan in concert with that activity. I think it makes the most sense to wait until the conclusion of the legislative session so that we can kind of do a broad brush review, but I do think that we need to address the possibility of making some changes later in the year, next year, actually.
That's a good point. Anything else? Okay, agenda items for next board meeting.
I want you to be aware we're going to be having some permit hearings, so when we set the date, if we could move this to the holidays, and we have a 10-day posting period we need to meet, so the latter part of January, I think, is more suitable for that.
So, the week of the 23rd, maybe. January. Look at your calendar.
27th works for me.
It's okay with me.
Are y'all good? 27th?
I'm not gonna be here on the 27th, I can't.
Would you, is the 26th?
I could do the first part of the week, but I'm out of town the 25th through the 30th.
Probably need to have council here for hearing.
Yeah.
I think that would be wise.
You're out when?
23rd and 24th.
About the 20th.
That's early. Mitchell was.
I mean, it could work.
I said you need 10 days.
Yeah, we gotta have everything ran in the paper. The paper is the hardest part to plan for.
Was the 25th no good? That's a Wednesday.
Wednesday.
Are you here, Paul?
I'm here on the 25th.
Are y'all?
Bill?
I can adjust my plans to be here on the 25th.
What about y'all? I'll make that work. So 25th, doable then? That'll work for you on Mitchell?
It will, and you wanna have it at our office?
Yeah. So January 25th, usual time, 9 a.m. at the Groundwater District office. Okay, what else? All right, well, I've got 10:44 a.m. I'll adjourn this meeting. Thank y'all for being here.
Have a happy holidays, Merry Christmas.
Yes. Merry Christmas. Thank y'all for what you're doing.